Hey guys, Mr. Yaisley here. So you're on to lesson number 2 in chapter F. And so lesson number 2 is all about how to reduce a fraction. So if you're looking at your page, you should see the lesson number 2, how to reduce a fraction. And so before we actually do any of it, I want to kind of talk about the process we should be going through mentally as we do it. And it's kind of a 5-step process. First thing we want to kind of do is we want to list out the factors for the numerator. So as you should have defined in your vocabulary, the numerator is the top number of the fraction, so it's what's on top of the fraction. Once we've figured out the factors for the numerator, then we need to list the factors for the denominator. And again, as you should have figured out in your vocabulary, the denominator is the bottom number of the fraction. After we've figured out the factors for both, we're going to identify the largest common factors. So what one do they have in common? Is there any one bigger than 1? And if there is, then we've got something we can do to reduce the fraction. If 1 is the biggest number that goes into both of them, then there's nothing we can do to reduce the fraction. So once we've figured out that common factor other than 1, then we're going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by that factor. So whatever number it is we figured out that went into both of them, the largest one we could find, we're going to divide both the numerator and denominator by that factor. Fifth step, we just need to check that final answer is reduced, and I'm not sure why the line didn't come through there, so we want to make sure that the final answer is reduced. I apologize about that. And if it's not, then we need to make sure that we reduce further as needed. And excuse me, I got that backwards. So we're going to check that the final answer is as low as it can go. So did we actually find the biggest number or biggest factor that went into both? And if we did, then we shouldn't have to reduce any farther. If we just found a factor that went into both, sometimes that means we're going to have to reduce more. So I apologize, I got that mixed up a little bit in my order, but we're going to check that that final answer is as low as it can go, and then we're going to reduce further if needed. But if you can do a great job of listing out the factors for both the numerator and the denominator, we should pretty easily be able to find the largest factor, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's move on to the examples, and I'm going to move my paper up just a little bit so you can see what I'm writing. There we go. So on example A, we've got 9 over 18. So first thing I want to do is I want to list out the factors of 9. So first one I know is 1 times 9. 2 doesn't go in, and then I know that 3 times 3 goes in, and I know there's no other factors of 9. So again, if you know your multiplication facts, this can make a huge difference in doing this very quickly. The next thing I want to figure out is what are the factors of 18? Well, I know that 1 times 18. It's an even number, so I know 2 goes in, and that's times 9. I know that 3 goes in, and that's times 6. And then there are no other factors because 4 and 5 don't go in, and 6 is already on my list. So once I've hit a number that's already on my list, I should have all the factors. Well, now I'm going to look at both of these lists, and I want to identify the largest common factor. Well, I see that 9 is on both lists. All right, so when 9 is on both lists, that means we need to divide both of these numbers by 9. That's step 4. So divide both by 9. And 9 divided by 9 is 1 over 18 divided by 9 is 2. So when I reduce this, I end up with 1/2. There is no other number that can divide evenly into both of those other than 1, which doesn't change the fraction, so we are reduced down as far as we can go. So that's kind of the process that we should be going through. As we go to figure these out, listing out those factors can be extremely helpful for you. Now, it's not a requirement. I don't have to see all of these, but I do want to see what you divided by to get to there. All right, so if you don't list out all the factors, I'm okay with that, though I like to list them out just to make sure I have them all. All right, but I do need to see what you divided by to reduce, so I need to know what the factor you found was. All right, so let's take a look at example B. We've got 12 over 15, or 12/15. So first thing I want to do, list the factors for the numerator. Well, I know that 1 times 12, it's an even number, so 2 times 6. Does 3 go in? Yes, it does. 3 times 4, and 4 is already on my list, so that means I've got all the factors of 12. Now I've got 15. Well, I know that 1 times 15. 2 doesn't go in because it doesn't end with an even number. 3 times 5, that's another factor pair. And then 4 doesn't go in to 15, and 5 is already on my list, so my list is complete. So now when I'm looking at this, in order to determine the biggest number that goes in, if I can't just look at it and see it, the best place to start is with the smallest number, which was 12, and start at its biggest factor, which is 12. So is 12 on both lists? Nope, it's not, so that's not a factor. Is 6 on both lists? Nope, it's not, so that's not a factor. Is 4 on both lists? No, it's not, so that's not a factor. Is 3 on both lists? Yes, it is, so it's on both lists, and that makes it my biggest factor. So I'm going to divide both of these by 3, and that should get me all the way reduced down. So 12 divided by 3, that is 4, over 15 divided by 3, that is 5. Well, if you're looking at your factor list, you may notice that that number is always across from the factor that we had. So when we looked at these ones, 9 divided by 9 was 1, 18 divided by 9 was 2. And so if we have the factor pair list, we can just look across from it and we already know what the division is going to come out as. But again, you can always do that division really quickly. All right, well, I'd encourage you to try example C on your own. So at this point, I would say go ahead and pause the video and then try it on your own. I'm going to continue on. So factors of 25 is where I start because I want to list the factors of the numerator. So 1 times 25, 2 doesn't go in, 3 doesn't go in, 4 doesn't go in, and 5 times 5. Well, I've hit a number that's already in my list, so that's complete. Now I need to list the factors of 55. So 1 and 55 doesn't end in an even number, so no 2. Does 3 go in? No, it doesn't. Does 4 go in? No, it doesn't. Does 5 go in? Yes. 5 times 11. Does 6 go into it? No, it doesn't. Does 7 go into it? No, it doesn't. Does 8 go into it? No, it doesn't. Does 9 go into it? No, it doesn't. Does 10? Nope. And 11's already on my list. So there we go. Those are complete lists. So again, to figure out which one is my biggest, I'm going to start with my smallest number, which is 25 of the two. And I'm going to start with 25. It is not on both lists, so that one isn't. Then I go on to my next biggest number, which was 5, and 5 is on both lists. So that is what I'm going to divide by. So divide by 5 and divide by 5. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. Over 55 divided by 5 is 11. So there we go. So reduced down, it is 5/11. All right, so I'd encourage you at this juncture, try example D on your own, then check your work with mine. All right, so let's start with factors of 110, because that's my numerator. So 1 times 110. 2 ends in 0, so 2 is a factor. 2 times 55. Is 3 a factor? Well, if I add these up, 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 0 is 2, so no. Is 4 a factor? Was 10 the last two digits? Nope. Is 5 a factor? Well, it ends in 0, so yes it is. So 5 times, well, if I just put that in there, it goes into 11 twice. Leaves me 1. Goes in there, so 5. And then into that, 22. So 5 times 22. Is 6 a factor? Well, 2 was a factor, but 3 was not, so 6 is not a factor. Is 7 a factor? If I look at it real quickly, no, it's not. Is 8 a factor? If I look at it real quickly, no, it's not. Is 9 a factor? No, it's not, because the digits don't add to a multiple of 9. Is 10 a factor? Well, it ends in 0, so it is. So 10 times 11, and 11's already on my list, so this should be the complete list of factors for 110. Well, now I need to list for 22. Well, 1 times 22, 2 times 11. Does 3 go in? Nope. Does 4 go in? Nope. Does 5 go in? Nope. Does 6 go in? Nope. Does 7 go in? Nope. 8? Nope. 9? Nope. 10? Nope. And 11's already on my list. So now I've got a complete list of factors. So again, I want to start with the smallest of the two original numbers, which is 22, and I'm going to start with the number itself and see if it's on both lists. Well, look at that. It is on both lists. So that is the number that we need to divide by. So I'm going to divide by 22, divide by 22. Well, 110 divided by 22 is 5, and 22 divided by 22 is 1. Well, anytime we end up with 5 over 1, the simplest form of anything over 1 is just the numerator itself. So final answer would be just the number 5. All right, well, hopefully you got that correct. If you have any questions, please let me know. Raise your hand and I'll come help you whenever I can.